This is your host, True. We're back with another episode of FTF Conversations on FTF Radio. Thank you for tuning in. I'm here with Dr. Nicole Ramsey, educator, researcher, um, a fellow Belizean is here. We're kicking off Central American Heritage Month, just really tapping in and touching base on where we from and what we got going on and how our work ties into our own explorations of connecting with our land and history. How are you doing today, Dr. Nicky?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Taking it easy, taking it slow, preparing myself for the rest of the week.
Simple.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that. I feel that. Honestly, especially September tends to be a busy month, especially for you, right? Teaching professor. Um, and I don't know how does that work when you got to prepare for the semester start?
yeah, so the semester actually started late August, mid-August, I believe, but
Hmm.
we're now like in the thick of it,
A
really getting
word.
into the material. So, September is really busy and it sucks too because it's always my birthday month. So I'm like, I
Hmm.
want to take it easy, but you know, gotta wait till October. But
Right.
yeah, it's
Handle
really
everything.
good.
And you're out in Austin right now, right? University of
Yeah.
Austin, Texas.
Before this, I was at I completed my grad degree actually in Northern California, the Bay Area
Shout
at
out to the Bay.
Berkeley. And yeah, and then I got a postdoc at the University of Virginia. So I went all the way to
Wow.
southeast, however, for 2 years. So this is kind of like making my way back west. Um, and UT Austin, they have like a really big, they're really big in Central American studies. Like a lot of the folks that I read and that actually work on Black people in Central America
Hmm.
came through UT Austin. Like a lot of my colleagues came through there. So, when the position opened up, I thought it was like the perfect opportunity. I'm close to home. Like it's a quick flight to LA. Well, not
Yeah.
quick, quicker than the East Coast.
Yeah.
It's closer to Belize geographically. And then there's a lot of Belizeans here too. So it kind of worked out.
That's
Hmm.
that's true, right? Because you can just hop on that flight from Texas, cut you half
Hmm.
the trip. Wow.
Yeah.
Um, so you mentioned a lot there. You going and getting your post grad, or what was that? Your post grad and your grad
Mhm.
studies. What talk about your work? I'm familiar just from our own conversations and the incredible projects you've shared that you're working on.
Mhm.
For someone who doesn't know anything about Central American studies or anything about diaspora conversations, how do you describe your work? How do you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so it's always interesting. I'm gonna try to keep it at a minimum because I feel like in order to understand the work, I have to go through like the whole kind of trajectory of like, well, in school we learned about the Maya, which is a lot of people's introduction. So I was always interested in ethnic studies and it just seemed like a natural kind of move to centering Belize in my work
Hmm.
because I'm learning about all these communities. We're in California. We learn about the history of Latinos in California,
Right.
not necessarily Caribbean folk, even though we are there. Um, so I began to kind of gravitate to that history and you know speaking to like a lot of mentors. I was like, you could actually like do this for a career and research this and learn more. And I was like, really? There's nothing there. So a little bit about my work. So I look at kind of Blackness, identity formations, race, cultural performance in Belize and the diaspora. And the diaspora is just kind of like Belizeans in the US, pretty much. And to be specific, Belizeans in California, because that's where I'm from. And that's where the biggest population of Belizeans reside. And also, I think it's important to note that I'm trained in Black studies. So I get that a lot of pushback too. They're like, you're focusing on Belize, like there's so many other groups.
Mm.
But my focus is on Black studies. Black Belizeans are overrepresented in the diaspora. to the point where anybody who's met a Belizean in the US, 9 times out of 10, they're Black, right?
Hmm.
Um, so I really wanted to focus on that. Growing up, I knew about the Mayas, I knew about all of these different groups. Um, but I didn't necessarily know about Blackness in Belize, even though everyone in my family's Black.
Right.
Um, I knew about Creoles and the Garifuna via family and some books that mention the Garifuna, but it was just really fascinating to me because I'm like, how did they get there? Like, what did slavery look like? Did that play a part? So it was just like these really big questions that I didn't necessarily have the answers to. So I think like in my work right now, I try to be really creative in terms of how I, get to those questions. So
Mm.
I'm looking at like Belizeans interacting in the digital space, which is cool because that's how we met in a digital space.
Right.
Um, Belizeans find each other through like national celebrations, music, tourism, and just kind of like everyday like ways that Belizeans identify
Right.
themselves or, perform their identity in, all of these kind of diverse ways. So to keep a long story short, that's like pretty much what my work is around.
No, I think it's important to detail it because you're right. There's so many, um, and I guess this is a great place, great time to get into geography because, Belize for where it's located is so diverse and people would have no
Mhm.
idea. And
Mhm.
and you just mentioned that the Creole, the Garifuna, the Mayan, the presence of the Mayan, and then there's the Mennonites and the Indian population and the China, the Asian population. Like it's such a diverse place, and there's a lot that can get overrepresented and even like missed, and still people don't know where it's located. So it's really cool. I think that's one thing that I've always appreciated. You're right. Also, you touch on like almost like the way that we connect and find each other. For me, it's always been through music and the digital space, but 100% through music. Um,
Mhm.
I'm thinking about like the Garifuna Street Fest when I went to see Aurelio Martinez perform a few years ago, and it was like what's wild is I think now I realize even how crazy that is that I saw him perform out here. And that was LA. And like I met so many Belizeans and Garifuna out there and people from Honduras and Guatemala.
Mhm.
And, you know, that's also something like even, I've seen you connected with so many educators who also are studying Panama, studying Guatemala, Costa Rica, all sides of Central America. So when you talk about that pushback, it's so interesting. You know, I just can't imagine. But it's dope because I know that you come from a place of wanting to authentically and lead with love with your research and with your studying and what you share. So it's dope. Yeah, and I'm glad that you noted that.
Mhm.
Um, so it's so cool. Let's talk about that. It's almost like I wish I'll put a map. I'll edit a map in here so people can see like this is where Belize is.
Yeah.
Um, but when when you talk about, especially people connecting through like national celebrations or the music, what are some of the other interesting ways that you found or things you've noticed around like pride and how we identify and just what it means to have that kind of connectivity in another place away from home, being out here?
Mhm. Yeah, no, that's a good question. And I think that's also like I think we were talking earlier about how Belize has a lot of historians and a lot of historians that aren't Belizean um focus on Belizean history. They know all of these things in the historical context. And I think like a lot of my work too involves like speaking with the elders,
Hmm.
really centering oral histories and in that just thinking of some of the ways that Belizeans, especially when they migrate to the United States, have kind of held on to these like forms of national pride.
Hmm.
Um, and I think it's so different too, that you look at how Belizeans, um, identify with the nation in Belize and then how they identify in the US. They're almost like extremely patriotic in the US, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, 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 yeah. That's
like
a great way to put it.
yeah, I had a professor who she spent a little bit of time in LA, and she's not from there, and she was just like, "Oh my goodness!" Like in every car they have these Belize flags, and I
Yeah.
just remember telling people, I was like, "That's kind of like a thing that I know other cultures have the flags, but Belizeans in LA, especially or in the US, they're like on a whole different level. Like,
No, it's like you gonna know
uh,
when you see us.
exactly, exactly. The flag, the bangles, the
The
jewelry.
Bengals. See,
Yes.
and
And I
let's
was
let's talk.
talking to
Yeah, those are
someone.
identifiers. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's like some of these things, right? And they're really expensive. So it's just like you have to you have to like really be tapped into, be like, I'm gonna invest in these bangles. I'm gonna wear them because this is part of my identity, almost like a
Hmm.
right. So it was just like little things like that I'm just like, I never see it discussed in like these larger discussions of identity, but I'm like, they matter. Like I remember I was in Oakland and I went to like I don't know, it was like something like Juneteenth festival or something. And there was this woman selling popcorn and she had like a gold cap on her tooth.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, "Are you Belizean?" And she's just like, "Yeah." And I was like, "How, like, I don't know what this is, but
Hmm.
it's just like certain little things." And that's more of like the aesthetic, like how you represent, yourself to people, how you signal to other Belizeans. And then, of course, thinking of that historically, like in a lot of my research, I talk about how when Belize gained independence, the majority of Belizeans, especially Black Belizeans, were already in the US. So it's like
Yeah.
kind of watching your country become, well, it was still a Commonwealth, but watch it kind of separate from the British Crown while you're in another, you know, country, the United States. I feel like
Basically,
that in
still
my
having that
work.
same experience. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's just kind of like the same community, but just way drastic different experiences. And in my work, I argue or, I explain how that also plays a role in how Belizeans really take pride in the national identity because it's almost like um, having, going from a British Honduran national to a Belizean national,
Hmm.
like that's very unique to the Belizean situation. So I think those all play a role in how
Hmm.
I vision that. Of course, like in Belize, um the the commemorations and the festivals are, even more grand and,
Yeah. Yeah.
bigger. So it's like different layers, but it's all kind of within the same, they're all doing it with the same intention, right?
But you said something so real, like I
Mm-hmm.
mean when like the gold tooth or the bangle, the
Mm-hmm.
flag in the car, it's like so many, even like the other day I was at my cousin was working Black Market
Mm-hmm.
Flea, and
Mm-hmm.
I was walking in and it was just something about the security guard, like it was in the laid back nature. It was just this laid back. It was a high pressure situation and he's so laid back.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard him speak. I said something. I heard him talk. I was like, heard the accent. I was like, oh, you Belizean, huh? Yeah, like, and
Mm-hmm.
immediately there was just this new rapport, dapped each other up, and like,
Yeah.
it's like it's cool because you're right. Like it's so interesting. I remember like even talking to my grandmother about that and my dad, like they talk about like seeing that independence gained by the time they were here. And I think that's such a recent, maybe that's just something now to even explore more because it does matter. It's such an interesting thing. Like I don't know what that feeling is like, but I feel like I notice in conversation or like just in the way that yeah like certain traditions or just modes of existence are still held on to, and then
Mm-hmm.
also like the parts that like I grapple with where it's like I'm seeing both sides, I'm first gen, I'm seeing and seeing what also like feels conflicting as the more I learn, but it's so interesting. But yeah, it's cool. I think my favorite thing is like what you said about the Bengals. Like if you know, you
Mm-hmm.
know, because that rose gold is so
Right.
unique. Um,
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, like having a place to call home and finding that here, it gives you just a different sense of it gives you a pride where of course like yeah it should be patriotic like yeah we gonna rep
Mhm.
this um but then also where you get uh, it gets interesting because maybe you can speak on this. Like, then I have met Belizeans who also look down upon, oh, you in the US, you know what I'm saying? Or like, there's like within, it's like there's always so many layers. Or even when I'm out there, sometimes I keep my hair back because, there's just the prejudice around wearing locks versus being in Jamaica, right? Or like in another Caribbean country or another. I think it's so just those nuances I find so interesting. Just when, social cultural, political, and I'm sure that's something you see a lot just in your studies.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think you use the right word too, like nuances. Like I know that I talk about like, okay, Belizeans in diaspora, they could be this way, and then Belizeans there can be this way. But there's so many, I think what makes researching Belize, like I love research doing research on Belize because as a first gen, I'm also learning.
Right,
And a
right,
lot of the times I'll read something and I'll go back to like family members and they'll be like, "Oh, I didn't know this. Like I didn't know a black man wrote the national anthem or a poem was adapted,
right.
like all of these things." So, um but at the same time there's like these little things that I'm just like, "Oh, this is so complicated to think about." Like you
Yeah.
think about class and everything. So I'll use like me for an example. Like my family identifies as Creole Belizean.
Hmm.
Um, and you know, stereotypically or historically Creoles have, a lot of the times been seen as kind of this upper echelon of society, which a lot of them are, right? But then, you also have to think about class, think about
Hmm.
kind of blackness, and those are a lot of the things that I really have to consider.
Right,
Um,
right.
and then
Yeah,
also, like, kind of going back to what you were saying about, the kind of tensions and conflicts that happen, like when you go back.
yeah.
So I witnessed it on like and heard stories from several people that are just pretty much like when I go back, you know, I don't really get the reception that I should as a
Hmm.
person that's Belizean. And then Belizeans in the country are just kind of like, "Oh, you're coming here with your American ways, trying to tell us how to, live."
Yeah,
Or
right, right.
so there's always like this tension and that I've always seen and heard about. And then, even historically, talking to folks, there's still kind of like a resentment of folks that migrated to the US before independence.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of folks, or there's a population of folks who think that, you could have been here to help the nation grow, right? But
Right.
instead you like ran over there and made your money, didn't come back. So it's
Yeah.
like levels too, because also Belize, like economically, they get a lot of money from remittances. So it's not like they're cutting them off completely. So it's just like a lot of things that are, happening. And you can also tell this through like the discussions about citizenship and voting.
Right. Especially right now.
Exactly. Where a lot of them don't think that Belizeans who maybe have dual citizenship or should have the right to vote or that spend time in both places should vote in local elections because it's like, oh, when things get bad, you can just go, back to the US. And
Hmm.
so it's just like very interesting things now.
And they're so
That
new.
Hmm?
And they're so new.
Yeah, where I'm just like, oh, this is, and other countries have these things. I know, like El Salvador, they allow their folks to vote, the Salvadorans in the US to vote on some
Wow.
things. So, like, there are a few countries that have that diaspora dynamic.
Yeah.
Uh, but I think it's just very interesting with Belize too. And I have my own thoughts. Um, as a person who always wanted to claim that I was Belizean growing up, and family members being like, no, you're American. Like, be proud that, you have
Mm.
citizenship, one of the most powerful. But now they're like, you're not American, you're Belizean. So it's like all of these
Right,
things that I'm
right.
just, how do
And
I,
it's cool.
yeah,
And I
it's,
mean, talk about that. Like, what kind of stuff that came up in that, what kind of thoughts, emotions, just things you observed when you were at the Diaspora Summit?
yeah. So the Diaspora Summit was actually, it was interesting. I use that word a lot. It can be code for a lot of things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
there were some parts that I was just really fascinated by. And there were other parts, as a researcher, but also a person that's attached to the country, that I was just kind of like, oh, I need to think about this a little bit more.
Hmm,
Um, so the panel that I was moderating was more about the history of the diaspora in the United States and diaspora rights. And it was Nuri Akbar,
hmm,
and a few folks that were on the panel that I'm just blanking on all their names. Um, but they were talking more about the history of how Belizeans came to the US,
hmm,
how they fared, like what they wanted to do politically. And there were a few people on the panel that were really into the arts world that I really wanted to hear more about.
hmm.
And that was also like another thing that I was thinking about too, because um I think sometimes it's um divided into like this is the political part of it and this is kind of the cultural artistic part,
Right.
when it's there they work together in a way. So it was just like really interesting stuff that I learned as well, and it was just more so of a call for folks to invest more in the diaspora. And I think like one of the main things was because they provide so much economically, they like kept Belize afloat in a way during the pandemic.
Hmm.
Um, and I think it was also interesting because I was like, I would like to know how they view us in diaspora outside of money and the
Right.
economic space. Um, so I think those are like some things that I learned. And also, I think the financial aspect. The second day, they had an investment forum
Hmm.
that was just kind of like all these people like invest in Belize, Belize, the time is now, right? So,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I'm knowing that Belize, a lot of people like to go there for tourism, but it was literally, they were just like, Belize, like, you don't want to miss out. It's like on its way to being the Bahamas and Jamaica, which
I was
was
like,
very
why would we do that?
unsettling.
Yeah. It's like, why would we? I don't know.
Yeah, it was unsettling, but also
Yeah.
I'm just like, you know, like thinking of Caribbean countries that tourism is a big part of their economy and stuff. So it was like I was like conflicted.
No, I would imagine. I mean, when I
Mhm.
think of Belize now, I think like, just being able to still enjoy the fact that it's like we're walking through small villages or small
Mhm.
towns, right? It's like the one, you see that Coca-Cola stand on the corner, you're like, okay, there's the
Right.
market, you see your restaurant, you got like the one crib where everybody is just in the courtyard playing music. Like it's just all these things trying to paint the picture, right? Like it's just what it's like for people. Like, it's still a place where you can find thriving community, and it's not in this utopian or metropolitan sense. Like even the city, for as busy as the city is, like it's so surprising. Like going to Belmopan, right?
The
Like
city is like a big village.
it's just right. It's like a big village. Like it's and
Hmm.
it's like still it's bustling. It's moving. It's
Yeah.
people. It feels like it feels like being like in New York City when you're like moving through the
Hmm.
city. Just the way people are crossing
Yeah.
the street. You're on Albert Street. You like boom. It's so busy. They selling. And then when you go to Belmopan, it's cool because it's like that's the capital. But it's like really interesting because it's kind of calm. It's kind of
Yeah.
calm
It's
and
super
still kind
calm and
of
chill. Hmm.
chill. Yeah, like still, it's still paved roads here and there, but it's like you still get
Yeah.
that town village feel.
Hmm.
Um, and I
Yeah.
always found it fascinating how like that was the capital, like the capital got moved there just after the hurricanes and all, like
Right.
which,
Hmm.
you know, it's so many things like that. Like I don't want to see, I don't want to. I would hate to see that turn into something as, commodified as like the way people view
Yeah.
Jamaica, Bahamas, because I think some of the treasure of Belize is the fact that it's not that. Like
Mhm.
it's real, just like, okay, cool. We just getting rolled tacos at
Right,
the
right.
village spot. Like this is just the
Little
whole
orange
village
one.
lined up in front of
Yeah.
our spot right now. Like, um,
And I think the interesting thing that you were saying was like, I think it's still true, but like Belize has no fast food like franchises.
yo,
So
it's
I was
it
like,
don't happen.
yeah, I was like, that's pretty special because it's just like, you're getting your stuff fresh.
So fresh. Yeah.
I
No, it's
don't know,
wild
maybe there's
because
some
even
folks out there.
but you know, like I mean, like I don't be saying this out loud publicly, but like I have a strict diet. We'll say that. Like I have a
Mhm.
strict diet. I got a bad heart. I can't eat no tomatoes, no onions. People know if you know. And it's
Mhm.
wild though, because in Belize, I'm eating them pepper, onions, I'm eating tomatoes, I'm eating salbutes,
No problem out
no
there.
problem, no pase
Mhm.
nada, no pase nada. Like it's like the food is so fresh and it speaks a lot. Like but yeah, it's interesting. And just to bring it back, to circle back to the Maya conversation, right? Like Central American Heritage Month. Uh, I think one of the things I remember, like when we first connected, was like I remember going through your page and seeing you at Zunantanich, or
Oh yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
it? Yeah,
Mhm.
like and I remember this past trip. I was looking forward because I was going, but I didn't get to make it to that one. I ended up going to a smaller one, Kazu. It was it
Oh,
starts with
Alton?
a not
No.
I've been to Alton, but it wasn't that one. It's a smaller one. Starts with a C. It's like
Jericho?
nah, Kazu.
Hmm.
I could just check real quick. Actually, this is
Yeah, I've
important.
actually
Yeah.
only been to two, Sinantinich and Altunha. But I need to go. Wait, was
Alton
it in
High. That's the
there's
one.
Cahal Petch?
Kahal
Cahal Petch.
Peck. Yeah,
Oh,
Kahal. Yeah, I went to Kahal Petch. That's
yeah,
where I
yeah,
was
yeah.
at.
I've been to that one too, actually. Yeah.
That's what I thought. So yeah, okay. Okay, fine.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
that's
yeah.
close to Zunantanich,
Yeah,
right?
yep, yep, yep. Mm-hmm.
So isn't it? So what'd you think when you're driving out there, right?
Yeah.
It's cool when
So
you see the whole shift. It's like you're going through Spanish Lookout, you're getting in the Kyle district.
yeah. And it's so funny because my family is rooted in Belize City. So they have like long lineage in Belize City and Belize District too, because the little villages within Belize District. So I would always hear about like the Kyle District and all of these
Like
places.
it sounds so far away.
Yeah, and I'm just like, oh, and my parents, they would read about it in schools. Maybe they visited when they were kids, but
Hmm.
we don't really have people out there. So I remember during my last trip, when I was doing field work, actually one of my friends, whenever my friends come to visit, that's when I do the adventurous stuff.
Yeah,
Cause
right.
I'm just like, if it was me, I'd just stay in Belize City, go to the Key, like I'm
Yeah.
very
Chilling, yeah.
But yeah, she wanted to go to Sunantinich, and I was like, sure. So I just remember the drive there was like so beautiful. Like you said, Spanish
Yeah.
Lookout. And I was just like, wow, this is like a whole other part of Belize that, I've only heard about. And we went to Sanatanich. We actually had to like walk away up there. I don't know if
Oh
normally
yeah.
they have drivers or something, but I don't know. That day we were just walking and yeah, it was a lot.
I heard no, I did hear about that. It's like a bit of a trek.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was like, this would be cool. I should have worn the right clothes, make it a like hiking thing.
Yeah, because it's like a
Um,
few miles. It's a few miles from that
yeah.
entrance. Yeah.
And I think when you get to the entrance, you have to take like a little contraption across the
To
water.
go
So
across the water. Yeah, that's what I
yeah,
saw. I saw that little thing. Yeah.
yes. And
It's so
yeah, it
fascinating.
was cool. It was self-guided. They have a lot of education around there. So they have like little centers that you can go and read. And I just
Mm,
remember Sinantinich, my friend was like, "Oh, let's go to the top." And I was like, "This is where I stop. I don't go
yeah.
up there." And, like it's pretty much mountain climbing to me, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
Have you
like, you
been
know
to the
what?
top of
I'm gonna
Altenhof?
try. I did. So
Yeah,
I was like, you know, if I feel unsafe, I'm gonna go back. But luckily I didn't feel unsafe. Like I didn't feel like I was gonna drop off the side.
yeah.
So we went up to the top and you can kind of see everything. It's like you're at the top of Belize, like you just see the top of the trees. And then even one point you can see Guatemala. Like it's that close.
I was waiting. I was like, it's so
Yeah.
wild
And
when
I
you
was
can
like,
see
this is
that.
so crazy, especially
Yeah,
considering the border disputes and stuff. I'm like, this
right.
is like you're literally like divided by a tree. Like,
Yo, you feel me? But like, but
mhm.
it's wild because you know what? You said something too before I forget. Like one of my favorite things was actually, and it's so wild because there is so much. Like I'm grateful that you would be surprised how much information actually really is in Belize about like just going to those centers, at each of the ruins.
Yeah.
Like there's so much history about just the land and like art and the ceramics and it's cool. Like it's really dope. Like you just reminded me. It's like yeah, like this. We got to get this research grant. We got to for
Yeah.
sure. We gotta. We hey, shout out to Getty. You know.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh my goodness. Cross fingers.
yeah, you know. Shout out my.
Mhm. Hopefully they're
Yeah.
watching
Yeah,
this.
it's cool. Cause it's wild. I think there's the thing that fascinates me and that I'm trying to explore in my creative work now and like which is we spoke about this like and it's cool. Like shout out people like Francis and there's an artist Cheyenne Washington who I went to school with. It's like
Mhm.
I know so many incredible Belizean artists. Um it's like there's a huge you said it like that education and the art and the culture like it goes hand in hand like there's a way to inform and take this research even further and get creative with ways of presenting information like you say like because there's so much it's so rich it's like even just talking about that drive like I'm just thinking about how I felt like even when you think about the city right and the type of cement that they use or like the way that they design the cement on the
Yeah.
houses. Like there's so like the architecture in Belize should be studied. Like there's so many things that are so unique that's like you don't find anywhere.
Hmm.
And those are the things that me like in my art I'm now trying to find ways to identify like and shed light to. So when you're researching, like, you know, I guess like, you know, I don't know, I don't want to spill the beans on the project that you shared with me when we left, but
Yeah,
when
no
you're,
worries.
yeah, like how do you go from, you know, this place of documenting, dealing with archives, found audio, images, like how do you transfer all of this into something that when you're presenting or teaching?
Ooh, that's a good question because I feel like, yeah, there's like a personal part of it, and then there's the professional part. So the personal part of it was, you know, growing up in Los Angeles, you know, coming up in the age of like VHS tapes,
Huh.
photo albums. Like I just remember seeing so many things when I was a kid, like seeing all these photographs, these videos of, you know, important events.
Hmm.
Um, and then I feel like as everybody got older, it was just like those became um, you know, more important,
Yeah.
extremely important, especially as folks were moving to kind of the digital. I'm always like, side note, I'm always mad at my uncle because he has a video of my christening and it was like this
No
whole
way.
Belizean like reggae like party. And I saw it like maybe 5 times and he can't find it. So I'm like,
Wow.
but
That's like, yeah.
so I think that's all like the personal part of me is like in my mind, I'm always like, I need to preserve everything. Um,
Hmm.
and I think, you know, that plays a part in a lot of the work that I do too. I use a lot of archives. Um, Unfortunately, when I was doing my dissertation, which is I'm turning my dissertation into my project right now, so I'm
Hmm.
expanding it. I was just getting into the archives in Belize, and then I went back home for Christmas, and then the pandemic happened. So I
Right.
actually haven't
Right.
been able to access the Belize archives in person since. And hopefully, you know, I'm going this year.
Yeah.
Um, so that was like really important to me. this is all before the digital kind of space. A lot of things, a lot of folks are being intentional about, making their archives digital for folks to access, which I'm so thankful for, because it saves me a trip, even though I'm gonna still go, but
Yeah.
also makes it accessible for people, that aren't in academia to access things.
Right. Right.
And I also, because I wasn't able to access a lot of Belize archives, I had to like turn to like non-traditional things.
Hmm.
Um, and a lot of my work, which is tied to a project that's actually coming out that I told you about, the digital project.
Excited.
So looking at like photo albums, family photo albums as like a living archive
Hmm.
of things, because, like going back to the lack of information about Belize, um, you don't really see yourself represented in the history. You don't see yourself represented, culturally, maybe it's music or the arts or anything. But when you look at, family photographs or, images or videotapes from like a party or, a social gathering or a commemoration,
Yeah.
uh, it also kind of fills in the gaps of some of those things that we've been missing. And luckily, a lot of elders, and I could send you some of the YouTube videos, have been posting things on YouTube lately, like
Yo,
interviews they've done or concerts
I
from the
came across this
1970s.
crazy. I feel like we might be finding there's this dude, Derek
Yeah.
Flores on YouTube. It's like a page called
Oh,
Derek Flores, and he posts
oh.
like I'm as you this whole time you've been talking, I'm like off air. There's like probably some link exchanges that should have been happening.
Mhm.
Like I
Yeah.
found some crazy video, like Lord, because
Mhm.
I'm posting for this week. You'll
Yeah.
see. Like I'm gonna share it with you more. Like just yeah, concert footage, party
Mhm.
footage. Lord, like people like Laura Rayburn, like bringing out
Yeah.
Calypso Rose, like in Los
Yeah.
Angeles, like. Uh,
Exactly. Hmm.
yeah, yeah. Continue because
And thinking about like music and media, I was an adult when I found out Calypso Rose is not Belizean. She was
right.
actually Trinidadian, but the she would like, hearing stories that she would come and visit California and do concerts, and the majority of folks were Belizeans. That's why she has a song called Mass in California.
And then
Me
didn't she
too.
sing a song about Belize? She sung
Yes, it's Fire in Belize.
Fire in
Yeah.
Belize, yeah.
And I think she has like honorary citizenship or something like that.
Yeah, sang with
So,
Aurelio.
yeah. So, also thinking about those things that I'm just like, listening to these songs, these soca songs, calypso songs. That's also an archive that I'm just like, a sonic archive that
Yeah,
I'm like, you have to really put everything into play, and be creative. So, I'm like, when I see things, um, especially on, Belize Facebook.
yeah.
Um,
Because hey, Belizeans be on Facebook. That's for
they're just like,
sure.
here's this photo from 1965.
Like
Um,
not on Google,
me and my
on
friend
Facebook.
me and my friend Sandra was like, we were laughing because, an elder will be like, here's this picture of this student that I met studying abroad, and it's Fidel Castro or somebody like, they're just like
Yeah, facts.
posting things that are, we're just like, what? Like so surprised and fascinated by. And they're just like, this is just something I had in my photo album that I had in my house for 30
Right. It
years.
was just on the shelf. But you know
Yeah.
what? You're saying something
Mhm.
like because I guess with this like so with this week with all of the music that I'm sharing, it's wild. Like that's because that's my connection to it. I feel like, and this is a perfect segue into the next. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on uh, preserving and archiving history. But before that, the music, it's it's wild. Like just me, even the amount of music I've been listening to is I've been studying for like a month. I feel like just digging. Like
Mhm.
um, you know about Nadia Cattouse?
Yes.
I'm like
Yes. And I was
the
actually thinking about her because she was really good friends with, oh my gosh, I hope I'm not jacking Claudia Jones,
yeah, and Paul
who's like a
Robeson.
communist who started, Notting Hill Carnival in
Right.
London. I'm just like, oh my goodness, there's such a
No, it was like, all
I need
right,
to know more.
no, people need to, and that's this whole first week is focusing
Mhm.
on Nadia Cattouse, Aurelio, Paul Nabor, um,
Yeah.
Andy Palacio, and that's really why I'm hoping we can talk with Ivan. And I'll see if hopefully schedules work out. We can loop you into that one
Yeah.
because it's like, I guess this is just a moment to share, like people like Nadia Cattouse, people for context, Aurelio Martinez, Honduran-born artist, Garifuna
Hmm.
musician, but again, honorary citizen in
Yeah.
Belize because of just his contributions to preserving the culture. Nadia
Hmm.
Cattouse crazy because she literally is one of the biggest folk legends, like
Hmm.
untalked about. Untalked about. I'm finding I went and downloaded so much music on YouTube from her that's just not even released, and it's like she was
Wow.
singing. I'm gonna send it all to you. She's literally singing about times in Belize. She's singing about what it was like growing up in the home. She's singing about falling in love with the white soldiers who were out there,
Hmm.
that
Oh,
and
oh.
how she was going to war. Like she's singing about, and I'm
Uh-huh.
like, this is real history. Like this
Yeah.
is records like Paul Nabor's an interview I found with him. He was like, yeah, I told my mom I wanted to sing. She said the song will come to you, something like that. I'm paraphrasing. I'm gonna send you this
Hmm.
video too, but he was just talking about, yeah, the story is, um, my great grandfather or my grandfather was running away from bad people trying to kill the Garifuna in Honduras, ran to Belize. He's like, yeah, my grandfather met my grandmother in was it Barranco? Or no, in Punta Gorda.
Hmm.
Um, and he's like, yeah, that's how I got here. And the interviewer's like, what was your grandfather's name? He's like, I don't know, I didn't ask. Like he's like, I never asked my granddad's name. I just
Yeah,
knew.
yeah,
He's like, and his last name was a Spanish name. It was like Sir. Oh God, I'm blanking right now. I don't even want to butcher it. But
yeah. Hmm.
the point being, the story was passed through music for him. There
Yeah.
was no writing it down. A lot of the history is oral or it is through the music. It's through literally like the Garifuna music is singing about, running away or being like, oh yeah, this land is not my home. They're talking about being chased out it's like all this stuff that's so rich. I'm like, yo, why is this information so, so in
Right, right.
your work, like, I guess I'm curious, why is it so important and what are the ways that you're hoping to see this kind of cultural heritage and information preserved and archived, moving forward?
Hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's so interesting that you say like um a lot of it is traced down through like oral histories and put in the music as well. Which is kind of like a Caribbean, like African kind of
Very, yeah.
um and I think that's also the reason why I decided to like, focus on performance and everything.
Mhm.
In terms of like my own research, performance, like in multiple ways, like musical performance, um, just like everyday kind of expressions, because I think there is something to be said about like even thinking about Belize, like if you go way back to like the enslavement period, right?
Mhm.
Where you have like captured, enslaved Africans that first stopped over in Jamaica, right?
Right.
As the story goes, you know, enslaved Africans that were sent to Belize were the unruly the unruly enslaved from Jamaica,
The
which I
rebels.
like that.
They said the rebels go.
Yeah, so even thinking about, you had all these folks that spoke different languages because they were from different parts of the continent. And it's just like, how else can we trace culture when you're not able to use a
Mm,
language? You're not able to read certain things, right? I think that's also like an alternative to the written archive
mm.
because it's just like, oh, how can I trace, you know, certain stories or certain histories or, things like that through like dancing, which, you could see in both Creole and Garifuna,
Yeah.
um like especially the Creole from like Gales Point that have their own like fertility dance and stuff, and the Garifuna via the drum and just their dance moves. So I think like those things are very important to me. Um, of course, through oral histories and oral storytelling. And I think those not necessarily like a complement like a lot of the historical work, like the archives,
Right, right.
but I think they can work together in a way that doesn't diminish like how people kind of share things through those things.
Yeah.
Because I think it also doesn't get um a lot of respect because I think sometimes too people are like, oh, you just want to do music. Oh, that's easy and fun. But there's
But
like
it's
some
so complex.
it's so complex or so many levels to it. I mean, even like, thinking regionally, the whole discussion surrounding the origins of reggaeton, right? That it's like come from Jamaica via Panama workers on the canal and things like that, the songs, they usually had stories, right?
Hmm.
Uh,
Right. Most of these
and
songs were stories.
right, exactly.
Yeah,
Like,
let's not
you
forget.
know, soca songs in Panama talking about building the canal from the sun up to the sundown and gets turned into like Spanish reggaeton dancehall. So even thinking about how things are
Mm,
carried through like different iterations of like genres and
yeah.
things like that.
No,
But
you're right. You said
going
because
off.
there's an interview, Nadia Kattou, she literally said she was like, yeah, one of the first she was like one of the first folk songs I learned was like just something that was sang in Belize.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's wild. Oh goodness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not
Yeah.
to end that train of thought because I was really enjoying that. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Um
no. Yeah. No, it's true.
and I think there's something cool like even I've been enlightened. Like I've had my brain just like it's like wow, like
Mm-hmm.
the the more I learn the connections, because when people think soca, most of the times like we're associating soca with like Carnival and Trinidad, which is like so, but like it's when you talk about your christening and how it was like a party. Yo, like Belize partying is just a part. Like it was like a celebration, even for funerals. You know what I'm saying? It was
Mm-hmm.
like they were playing Punta Rock. It was the Bruckdown medleys. It was, like all the and even when it's so cool because the music allows you to see kind of both sides of Belizean history. You get like the Garifuna side, but then also you get the Creole, like folks like Mr. Peters and like I think that
Mm-hmm.
whole it's so wild, like, and that's something I've tried to keep aware of, like, as I even craft these playlists and like choosing which artists to talk about, like it's so much pressure I'm putting on myself low key, but it's like, it's like, all right, because at the end of the day, both sides of the story, as like what you're saying about like, leaving out one, like, they both complement each other. They both inform on like the greater narrative of just around what happened, what was going on in Belize, like the fact that, yeah, it was deep colonial history up until the 80s, which is like, I think for people to understand that, like, this is that means literally like it was colonized 10 years after hip hop was born. Like, listen, really, like, you know what I'm saying? People got to understand that. Like, Fight the Power was already out, you know what I'm saying? Like, 1980s, you done already had Zapp and Roger making music. Like it's,
That's true. Yeah.
you already had Japan and all these things happening.
Mm-hmm.
And then Belize is still colonized.
Right.
So then even when we look at things like today, just the issues going on in the world, and just what it looks like to still be having whole nations just fighting
Mm-hmm.
for basic needs and survival. Like, I think even for Belize to be where it's at today is like pretty commendable and like, the history as complex as it is and
Mm-hmm.
it's still so much I'm learning and it's really wild. Like I think that's why like the work you do is so important. Like the article you shared recently, the talks just showing up and being able to like, hey, yeah, we're here. This is what we're talking about. Like to just,
Yeah.
be a professor in these spaces, be in the space of academia. Like I'm learning every day how important it is to kind of share, just to share,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it is important to know, like, piggybacking off what you were said about it being overwhelming. I always have to remind myself that, there's like so many things that I don't know. And
Goodness, yeah.
like you just always have to be open to like learning new things and learning, new perspectives. And I think like a lot of the times too, I've, been in conversation with folks in Belize that were Maya or Garifuna or Mestizo. And it's just kind of like, oh, my lived experience and my family history in the country is so different from theirs. So it's
Yeah.
just, even though we're all Belizean, it's like, I'm not Mestizo Belizean or I'm not Maya, but
Right.
So it's just very fascinating because I'm like, you can't possibly like know everything. And I think that's kind of the beauty, but also the overwhelming aspect of it because there's like so much to learn. Um, and I think one of the things that I do really like is the National Institute of Culture and History niche in Belize.
Hmm.
Um, is an organization that has like different branches. So I think they have one predominantly on like culture research. So
Hmm.
I actually got a grant, not a grant, but I worked with them closely when I went there because I had to get permission to do research.
Hmm.
And they're like that organization that kind of compiles everything and they're really doing a lot of work on like preserving certain cultures and histories and sometimes they'll send folks to I don't know Dangriga to be like cover the guy from the settlement day or something
Right.
or go up
Right.
north and cover Dia de los Muertos, which I was an adult when I found out they practiced that
Didn't
there
even
because
know that they practiced that in Belize.
yeah I just assume I'm
Wow.
like
I was today years
Latin.
old.
Yeah.
See,
So
this
it
is
was like
we
things
gotta
like that.
chop it up so much more. Like there's so much
Yeah.
like it's so wild. Like just
Mhm.
for context for everybody tuned in, like Dr. Nikki and I we had lunch maybe a month ago. Was it
Yeah.
maybe a month and a
Two.
half ago? Yeah, but for time is flying 2 months ago. And
I
then that
know.
was right. Then I had the car accident. So much. There's so much to talk about. So it's been a minute. This is like a long overdue catch up. So
Mhm.
um, but okay, yeah. You know what? I appreciate you sharing that. Because I think people should know where these places are that are doing that
Mhm.
preservation work.
Yeah.
Um, do you have any like any events or publications you're excited about coming up? Any just presentations?
Yeah. So a lot of the presentations that I do actually, like, I'll go to a conference and present them because I want to get feedback to turn them in
Mm,
to like a paper or something. So those are coming.
mm,
Um, I have a few articles that are going to be coming out in the next um few months. So I'm
yeah,
working to make those like accessible so that folks can access it. Cause I know the
right.
last one, I was sending people PDFs because it was closed. Um,
Ah, right.
and
Yeah.
then yeah, and then also like that's actually what I was doing before we met. Me and my colleague, I think I told you we have
Hmm.
a project called the Black Central Americas Project, which we're really excited about. The website should be going live in a few months.
Nice.
And it's just kind of like we were talking about a space for folks to learn more about their history, to have a database of things that they can
Mm,
search for particular events or records, hopefully. Um, and then also we also are working with the Tony Gleaton estate. And I don't have it with me, but Tony Gleaton was like a photographer that went throughout Latin America capturing the Black presence. So he had these like
nice.
beautiful images. So the image that I showed you earlier with the girl with the
Yeah.
flower. So that was like one of his images that I really like.
Wow.
We're able to kind of, host that on the site so that people can see them
Yeah.
because it's quite expensive. Um, so we're happy to do that and also like collaborating because it's not a one-time kind of event. It's kind
Hmm.
of part of something. So we're going to continue to grow that. And
Hmm.
then I think also with my own work, so Melanie, who's my colleague who works on the project with me, looks at kind of Creoles, Afro, Mestiza,
Mm,
the Caribbean coast of Nicaragua. She's from Miami. And then I look at kind of Belize diaspora.
mm,
So we're hoping to use this. Well, we are going to use that as a space for our own projects. So I'm hoping in the near future, I'm already like laying the groundwork to do an actual kind of interactive project on Belizeans in Los Angeles and hopefully
Hmm.
expanding to the US because I
Yeah.
know so many Belizeans in Chicago, so many in New York,
Yo, so many in
Florida,
Chicago. Crazy.
and they all have like their own histories. I think New York Belizeans are more organized.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the ones in LA are just massive and they just live, all over. So I'm hoping to kind of have some type of place where we can like have articles, have interviews, from Belize's in LA, have it be a space
Hmm.
to kind of trace and learn more about the history of that. So those are like some things, in addition to like my book manuscript that I'm working on.
Nice. Nice.
Hopefully everything
Oh
goes
yeah.
no evil eye or anything.
Nah, that's exciting. That's really exciting and so important. I'm there's two things that are like fighting in my brain right now. One is there's an artist I just met from he's another Belizean artist. I gotta send you his page. Really dope. He just did
Mhm.
this cool installation at a farm at Mudwater Farm in what is it? Hawthorne? I can't. I think it's in Hawthorne or Watts. No, Mudwater Farm in Watts. Um, and now I'm blanking. But okay, no, that's exciting. And then
Mhm.
is this 20 for your book manuscript? I mean, we're gonna keep that under wraps, but is that 2025? Is that like is that
Oh, I don't even know.
just up in the yeah. I
Because
mean, because
well,
that process is
yeah, I think the whole process, I think is going. So
yeah,
that's
yeah,
continuous, but I think the whole process of like publishing an academic book, it has to go through like so many different
yeah.
iterations, so many like reviewers and everything.
I
So
mean, even what
hopefully
you were saying
like
about reviewing your articles is so
yeah, oh my, it's such a long process
yeah.
that I'm just like, oh my goodness, I wish I can like have something out all the time. It's like a very long process and yeah, but the writing is happening and the
Hmm.
research is happening consistently. So yeah, and I'm still yeah, doing visiting the archive, doing things. It's also one of these things where I'm just like, I just have to turn things in and stop trying to write.
Yeah.
Like always something to add. But also there's another I met two other Belizeans, Astrid, um, who I believe is Garifuna Belizean.
Oh,
I met her this summer. I kind of just followed her online, journalist who does a lot of work. And then
word.
also there's this project called Ode to LA. I think I've shared it on Instagram. Um,
The the show? The show happening?
yeah, it's like an archive.
Yeah,
Uh,
I know the gallery that's hosting it. That's the gallery that I
yeah.
told you about that wants to host the Belize show.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, girl.
Wait, is somebody involved in that, a Belizean?
So Madeline, I think runs.
Stop playing. Madeline Inez, she not Belizean.
Yes.
Stop playing.
So Madeline is actually,
That's
you're talking about
crazy.
archive. And so Astrid actually introduced me to Madeline.
That's
And
crazy.
we were having like a lot of these same conversations. Um, she's been doing archival work with UCLA for a bit. So I'm really looking forward to like learning
She's
more.
blowing my mind. This is crazy.
This is like a common thing within LA because it's just like everyone is Belizean.
And
And
you
it's just
know,
like,
this just pop that because that exhibit is very powerful. That exhibit, what it's done for it, it's
yeah.
wild. Like I didn't make it to the opening. I'm afraid I had a show the same day, and I really wanted to make it over. Shout out Perry and Ram. Perry's an incredible curator and just person. Um,
Hmm.
it's wild. It's actually so wild. Like Perry is a dope researcher too, and a dope vinyl DJ. But the impact that's had on LA, it's so important right now. It's like literally it's wild. I had no idea that she was Belizean.
And it's also interesting because it's like really saying like in order to tell a story about Los Angeles, you can't really tell it
without
without
Belizeans.
Belizeans at all.
That's what shout out DJ Willy Wonka. He's a DJ. I didn't meet him personally, but I saw him perform, and when he was spinning, it was at the Juve, which
Mm.
is the Junkyard Juve. Shout out Foreigner. Um, and Foreigner, I
Mhm.
mean, he put on Belize. He's Foreigner rep Trinidad, but he be showing love to Belize heavy. He trying to find a
Mhm.
Belizean wife. That's why we trying to. I keep telling him, I'm like, we gonna find you a Belizean wife. Like he's an incredible DJ and curator out here. And DJ Willy Wonka was up there on stage like, yo, if you want to know the real LA, you got to find you a Belizean. And the crowd lit up. I'm talking like 400, 500 people in the crowd throwing up flags. I was like, dang, this is like 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning. You can't see people. I just saw flags.
Right.
I didn't know I
Like,
realized in that moment, I was like, oh, I'm basically in a party full of Belizeans. Like,
yeah.
this is fire. Like,
Hmm.
uh,
No,
and
for
that's
sure.
new for me. Like I think the music and just seeing how the music brings all of that out. Because before it was like, but that's so dope. I think I'm excited to see when that website launches and goes up. Like what you talk about the
Yeah.
paywall information and all.
I'm always taking, feedback, thinking of what would look cool, what do people want to see.
Yeah,
Um, and we'll just like roll it out in stages too, because I think the mapping part is really the most important part for us right now because
yeah,
going back to your question earlier, like people are like, where is Belize? Where are these places? So I think that's why the mapping part is so important to us, because it literally, you have no excuse anymore
yeah,
to, I've
yeah.
had people be like, oh, Nicole's Brazilian, Bolivian. I've heard all of these, Botswana, like everything except Belize. So I think it's really important to
Yeah.
have a map, and then you can have different sites like
Mm,
Punta Gorda, Dangriga,
right. They got to
Limon.
know the districts.
Exactly. So that's like where we're starting with now. And yeah, we look forward to, working with folks and kind of adding. We already have like a huge database, um,
Yeah.
just from some of the student workers that helped us, and then also Melanie and I, like little things that we collect, like court documents that
Mm.
we don't necessarily need for our work, our books, but we're just like, this will benefit, people will benefit.
It's information. Yeah.
Exactly. So, practicing not sitting on information and utilizing it in ways that can also, you know, help someone else, or yeah.
Nah, facts. Thank you for
Mhm.
your time, Dr. Nikki. I want to
Yeah,
just
thank you.
personally thank you again for joining the show. I know I still got plenty to chop it up with you about. I know you're
Yeah.
also in the middle. It's a busy time, so don't want to keep you from working. Do you have any final thoughts or just to share with any listeners um thinking about again just Central American Heritage Month, thinking about your
Mhm.
work. If you want to share about where people can find your articles or find and just keep up with your work.
Mhm. Yeah, so my website, I feel so bad because it needs to be updated seriously. Um, so when that is, you can find me there, Nicole Denise Ramsey, and then also Twitter, where I tend to share like a lot of articles and things that I'm working on. Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, I just really appreciate you for having this space, and then also considering Belize and everything that, and everything that you do in terms of art, or, these interviews and these spaces of dialogue. Um, and I think like it's really important in terms of like Central American independence today. The 15th, that doesn't includes all the Central American countries except for Panama and Belize. Um, and then, of course, Belize celebrates theirs on the 21st. So I think just September, for the people listening, like maybe make it a point to just be like, this September, I'm going to learn about Belize. I'm going to, you know, listen to Trues, because you have this like playlist with all these, Belizean songs that I was just like, this is amazing. So just like creating, I mean, supporting Belizean creators, content creators, for the month of September,
Mm,
especially.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, I really appreciate this conversation.
No, this has been great. It's fantastic. And I mean, I know we went a little over our
Yeah,
we went a
I didn't
little
even realize.
no, I know it's just flowing. It was great to hear your thoughts and more stories and just hear about, what means what the work means for you. And it's
Mhm.
dope. I got so many things I want to ask you now off air just about researching and hopefully finding ways that we can connect our work too. Because I'm like, even just talking more of like the bangles and all these, I'm like getting ideas for like some sculpture work and this archive sound project I'm doing. I'm like, there's
That'll be
things I
amazing.
gotta share you. Yeah, like I gotta share this music I'm finding too, like all the Naughty Katu songs. Like,
Yeah.
because I think you can find a lot of music from Belize on services now. A lot of
Yeah.
like, yeah, you can like, and shout out to Stone Tree Records for that. Ivan,
Mhm.
good brother. But it's wild too because there's still so much I'm seeing on YouTube, like, and there's so much lost. But yeah, let you get back to
Yeah.
your work, and we'll stay in touch, and hopefully we can jump on it and do this again soon, and
Yeah.
have some sort of follow up when the website goes live.
Yes, yes, yes. I'll definitely let you know when all that goes live. Yes.
Definitely. FTF Conversations is your host, True. You've been listening to Dr. Nicky. Stay tuned this week. We're gonna be playing more records from Belize all over as early as I can find. I'm not gonna give you the whole spiel. Just tune in and check the page for more info. Peace.